So, what would the perfect society actually look like? And, more importantly, who should be in charge? Believe it or not, about 2,400 years ago, the Greek philosopher Plato tackled these exact questions in his masterpiece, The Republic. And let me tell you, his ideas are just as challenging and relevant today as they were back then. Let's dive in.
At its very core, Plato's entire book is really an attempt to answer this one massive question. It's a question we're still wrestling with in, basically every country around the world.
But to figure out who should rule, Plato, who's speaking through his old teacher Socrates, realized he had to take a step back. He had to start with an even more basic question. What even is justice?
In the book, Socrates just takes a wrecking ball to all the common answers of his day. He points out that, hey, just telling the truth isn't always just. What if you're telling a madman where to find a weapon? The whole help your friends, hurt your enemies thing? Well, that falls apart pretty quick when you realize your friends might not be the best people. And that cynical idea that justice is just whatever the powerful say it is, Socrates rejects that as just a description of power, not a real moral truth.
And this is where we get to Plato's big, kind of radical idea. For him, justice isn't about a single action. It's a state of being. It's about harmony and order, where every single part of a system or person is doing its proper job, and only its job, creating this beautiful, balanced, healthy whole.
Okay, so how do you even begin to explain a concept that big? Well, Plato gets really creative. He decides to build an entire ideal city from the ground up. Not really as a political plan, but more like a giant magnifying glass to see what this justice looks like in practice.
He uses this brilliant analogy. The state, he says, is just the human soul writ large. It's the same thing, just bigger. His thinking was, if we can design a perfectly just city, which is big and easy to see, then we can use it as a map to understand the structure of a perfectly just individual soul.
And this parallel structure is absolutely key. So Plato says the soul has three parts: reason, which is our logical guide; spirit, which is our sense of ambition and courage; and appetite, which covers all our basic desires for food, money, you name it. The ideal city mirrors this perfectly. You've got the wise rulers, who are pure reason, the courageous warriors or auxiliaries, who are the spirit, and the producers, the farmers and craftsmen, who take care of the city's appetites. In both cases, justice only happens when reason is in the driver's seat.
So you can probably see where this is going. This very specific structure leads directly to Plato's most famous and, definitely his most controversial conclusion about who should be in charge.
He argues that a truly just society is only possible when a very specific and very rare kind of person holds all the power. Not the richest person, not the most popular one, not the strongest general, but the wisest.
And there it is, Plato's radical solution. He basically believed the biggest problem in politics is that power and wisdom are almost never in the same place. His fix? You have to unite them. You have to make absolutely sure that the people with power are the ones who have the deepest understanding of truth.
So, why philosophers? This is where his famous allegory of the cave is so important. He thought that most of us are like prisoners, stuck in a cave, just watching shadows on a wall and thinking that's reality. We mistake these imperfect copies for the real thing. But the philosopher, through years of intense training, is the one who can break free, leave the cave, and see the world in the sunlight, the world of forms. This is a higher reality of perfect truths, like absolute justice and ultimate goodness. And because they've actually seen the truth, they're the only ones qualified to lead everyone else out of the darkness.
But here's the thing, Plato wasn't just some starry-eyed idealist. He was a very sharp observer of how politics actually works. And he laid out a clear path for how even his perfect state could fall apart if that ruling principle of reason ever lost control.
He mapped out this pretty chilling downward spiral. The ideal aristocracy, ruled by the wise, decays into a timocracy when the leaders start caring more about honor and glory than wisdom. That then gives way to an oligarchy, where money is the most important thing. The massive inequality this creates eventually sparks a revolution, leading to a democracy. Now, for Plato, democracy was pure chaos. It's ruled by the appetites of the masses, where every desire is treated as equal. And he argued that this total freedom creates a power vacuum that allows a clever, ruthless tyrant to swoop in and take over.
It's a pretty stark warning, right? So how does this 2,400-year-old argument still echo in our world today? How does it still shape our debates and our ideas about what a good society should be?
Honestly, it's almost impossible to overstate the impact of this book. It directly inspired his student Aristotle.
It shaped centuries of utopian literature, and its ideas are still the foundation for so many modern political thinkers. The questions Plato asked about morality and politics, about who is truly fit to lead, they are the very same questions we are still asking ourselves today.
But, and this is a huge but, the Republic has always been incredibly controversial. For centuries, critics have pointed out that its rigid class system, its censorship of art, and its focus on the group over the individual sounds less like a utopia and more like a blueprint for an authoritarian nightmare. They ask, could an all-wise, totally incorruptible philosopher king ever really exist? And for us today, his deep, deep distrust of democracy can sound pretty elitist.
And that really brings us to the final, and maybe most important, takeaway. Maybe Plato's Republic was never meant to be a literal political plan. Maybe the city was just a metaphor for the self all along. The ultimate challenge, then, isn't just about building a just society out there, but about building a just and harmonious soul inside ourselves, one that's governed by reason, not by our desires or our ambitions. And that is a project that feels just as urgent today as it did 2,400 years ago.